Discussion and adoption of the Merced County Associations of Government 2024 One Voice Priorities for the City of Livingston. Lopez.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item, at a previous meeting at the October 17, 2023 meeting of the Mayor and the City Council, Council members Roth and JT Mann were selected as the delegates for the One Voice trip. During this trip, the delegates, as well as other delegates from the remaining cities in the County of Merced, will be lobbying federal officials in D.C. for the priorities that have been established by the One Voice group. There have been some preliminary meetings that have gone on where there have been some preliminary conversations related to potential priorities of all the cities in Merced County. The delegates felt that it was really critical that this item come before council so that there's collective buy-in from at least the majority of the council. As part of the preliminary priorities that have been identified, there's 3 priorities that stand out from the City of Livingston. Those include advocating for the funding for the Rec-Plex, the gap funding that we know exists. 2, increased fire personnel staffing and grant funding opportunities through FEMA, also known as a SAFER grant. And then the third one is infrastructure projects, including new water wells, treatment, wastewater, and other infrastructure projects. The delegates and I do believe that it's important to get collective council feedback. I really want to thank Councilmember Roth for reaching out to make sure that there was collective buy-in from the rest of the council. So that concludes the report for this item, Mayor. Happy to answer any questions for this.
Thank you. So I see 3 items. If this council decides, so it would be it could be either one of them, all 3 of them, or number 1 and then number 3, not necessarily in that particular order, it just depends. So there's always that option, right?
Yeah, our preference, based on what MCAG has provided so far, 2 to 3 priorities is best. And then if they could be organized in terms of the top priority to the least priority, that would be great for us as well, Mayor.
So thank you for mentioning that recommendation. Is that recommendation also has and I forgot to ask earlier about had these priorities been looked at by or recommended by the lobbyists from MCAG, just because they're the ones in Washington, they're the ones to be able to see which one potentially might have a better chance to be to be of more interest. Has that been the case?
So the lobbyist has been in the preliminary conversations. They haven't provided any feedback on the priorities, but I do know that just because of the region, collectively there are infrastructure projects from across the county that have been put forward as priorities, water and wastewater. And then the fire staffing item was something that at least 2 other agencies also identified. And so reading the body language on the Zoom, it looked like the lobbyist was making note of those items, that there was collective we'll say agreement just by way of bringing those up collectively. So I did note that they were, I think, making note of those items that everybody, or at least the majority of the groups or the cities had put forward.
All right, thank you. Council, any other questions?
Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong. Last year for the One Voice trip, weren't we limited to just 2 topics?
I think, if I remember correctly, it was ideally 2, but possibly 3.
That's my fear, is if they try to limit us dwindle it down to 2, which 2 do you pick? And that's something that we're seeking guidance on. 2 and 3 seem like they're a little easier to connect with other agencies or other cities around us. But 1, the Rec-Plex is also very important. So just seeking feedback from everyone here. I think our goal is to have all 3 in our pocket once we go over there, but if we are limited by the group, then again, seeking guidance, and if not, we can come back at that time if that's something we can do.
I think you do make a very good point, and something that I had noted down, because you guys have been the ones attending those meetings. And then also I was thinking of how many other agencies have similar priorities, because then that means there's going to be more competition within those priorities. So could that affect our chances? So I think it's also something to consider as well. Council, any other questions?
I agree with the point that was addressed just now. The infrastructure projects, item number 3, I think that should be front and center, because if we're talking about our water issues here and item number 5, so on and so forth, we need to make that a priority, not just on behalf of Livingston, but because we're coming from a regional standpoint. And I think it is easier too with item number 2, because everyone is in this area is facing this, that you're collectively going there. Item number 1, that's more personal to Livingston. We want to make sure that we get what we need in order to keep going forward on that project that we have. But if we had to choose, I would look at 3 and 2, and keeping 1 in the back pocket so that it could be presented if 3 items were acceptable for this meeting, the one voice trip.
For 3, I think we should further narrow that down to possibly water wells and treatment. Do we all agree with that? To refocus that. Keeping wastewater there in the back of your mind, on the back burner, but really focusing on the treatment and the water itself, the water wells.
Well, I wish you guys luck. We are sending our brightest, so. One thing, Mr. Mayor, is kind of do with this, and I can't think of the name of the grant that we can get from the state, and fire department can help me on this. There is some money maybe available that we can have city write a grant from the state. Refresh my memory on that grant for the extra personnel funding. Thank you. I'm sorry, I just want to, huh? Safer grant, or is it safer grant? Yeah, it is safer grant.
Robert Wayne, Merced County Fire. Yes, it is a safer grant.
Yeah.
That is the one that you can write to the state to
safer grant,
help pay for additional staffing.
Thank you.
It does have a time limitation on it, though. I believe it's 3 years for that specific grant.
Thank you. Yeah, and the reason I want to mention safer grant is I'm pretty sure the funding through FEMA is never non-ending. It's always for a certain number of years anyway as well. So, in fact, while we're doing this, maybe through Mr. Lopez, are we doing anything on that safer grant, or are we moving? Is there anything I've been meaning to ask you, but I haven't had opportunity.
Yeah, we have a meeting with the county tomorrow, and I did bring that up to the county CEO. And talking to Chief Pimentel, there are some questions about what agency is the eligible agency to request that funding, and it appears to me that it would be Merced County. And so I've offered up any sort of assistance that they need from the city of Livingston to help support, or any sort of data that they need. But we are having a meeting tomorrow to talk about that.
Yeah, and then slightly keep me in check, Mr. Attorney, just to make sure when we're asking those questions that whatever we get as far as grants are equally applied, not towards any particular station, that it should be applied anybody that's got a contract with the county, and to be distributed equally amongst all stations. I wouldn't want them to, and I have nothing against, say 96 should get its equal share if the grant is funded as being applied to, then say Station 91 or some others. We should all get equal share. Just want to make sure that there's an understanding on that.
Yeah, I don't know how the county is planning to submit that application. I know that they submitted one last year and it wasn't funded. I know that the city of Merced did apply, but they have their own fire department and they were awarded that grant. What I will say, though, is that last year we had a meeting with FEMA, and we did bring up the SAFER grant last year to say, hey, look, we're looking to apply for this, so be on the lookout. So it is, I think, a really good opportunity to pursue, especially considering we brought it up to them last year.
Yeah, just wanted to put that out there with everybody so you guys have the information. Thank you.
Council, any more questions?
No.
So if I understand correctly, I want to make sure that I have this correct. So the top priority, infrastructure, including new water wells and treatment in particular, the SAFER grant, and then the third would be the Rec-Plex. Did I understand that correctly by consensus? Yes? I'm seeing 4 nods.
I mean, but before we get there, I think there's a couple of things, but, you know, I think, from my perspective, I think that there's probably more opportunities to get funding for fire personnel, and especially because we're in the works of, we're in conversation with the county in regards to that MOU with fire. But personally, I think I would want to see number 3 first, number 1 second, and then number 2 as number 3. But then again, that is just, you know, because I think that there's more opportunities for us to. I mean, obviously we want to get all 3, but I think that there's more opportunities out there to be able to get interest in getting some support for item number 2. I mean, if we get all 3, then it's great. But I think, you know, there's a better chance, based on conversations that I had with our state representatives. I think number 1, I'm sorry, the Rec-Plex has a pretty good chance, and especially because there are some deadlines that need to be met for the original grant to be able to for the funding to be used. So, but that's just my opinion on that.
So with that, if I could have a motion maybe, or
Let me go for public comment. So is there any public comment on the phone in regards to this item? Hearing none, any public comment in the chamber in regards to this item? Bringing it back to the dais.
Yes, Mayor, so if I could have a motion for those priorities, that would be perfect for me, because I know that we had differing priorities here, but I know that whatever the council chooses to do, I'm going to push for all of them, but clarity would be preferred on my side, Mayor.
So I want to make the motion to list as priority first, item number 3, 2, 1, for the adoption. Let's see. Well, where is that? What is actually the? Well, those are the priority in listing them. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Council, real quick, in the last meeting we had with all the delegates, if my memory serves, and they were saying for things like, let me see, number 1, there was a big opportunity for that. So, and that would be for the Rec-Plex. So that's what I got from that meeting. I have the notes also, but I'm almost positive that's what they said. That was out there. And Christopher was in that meeting also. And that's the day my microphone went down at work.
Well, Mr. Roth, since you were there, what is you're saying what priority should we put in since you've been?
Well, I think we should go for just me, myself. Tonight we had a huge conversation about water, you know, and
Yes.
it was big. So that should be number 1. Number 2, for number 2, I'd go with probably number 2.
Wait a minute, I
I'm
thought
sorry.
you said number one, you mean,
That's what I meant. Number
that's what I
one.
thought you
And
meant, okay.
then- So basically.
312.
312, yes.
Would you wish to amend?
No,
So,
I want to just go ahead and just say, there's a motion on the floor. But if we really are taking these items seriously, and that when we came to council, we came before our residents, our personal priorities to bring to the citizens was clean drinking water and another fire department. And staff, you know, our own fire department if we could, but staffing, we know that that's been an issue. And I know that when we were all interviewed, those were our priorities. And I understand that the Rex-Plex, you know, that's for our youth. I'm about our youth and the programs that we need for our youth and elders. If there's a chance for funding, what you're saying is there a chance for funding, that's not going to change the way that I view our priorities for Livingston. Water, fire.
And this is the whole reason why I wanted this brought up for discussion, so we can all come to a consensus on what we want to do and go for.
and I think to Mr. Roth's point, I think that was, you know, by having, like I mentioned earlier, some conversations with the elected officials, they have expressed that we shouldn't miss the opportunity to look into the funding for the Rec-Plex. And then that's why I asked, you know, based on the input from the lobbyist, which he's the one in Washington, he has a better feeling of potentially which items might get. I mean, obviously we want all three of them, but if we get one, that's huge. That's 30%. You know, so once again, I think that there's more opportunities to get better chances to get for the fire personnel. But at this time, there's a motion on the floor by Councilmember Soto. Is there a second?
Mr. Lopez, before we continue on, can you share what you just mentioned to me about possibly combining the two? I think that was a genius idea.
Yeah, so one of the things that we could do is, because the Rec-Plex is essentially a piece of city infrastructure, what we could do is that infrastructure umbrella be the water facility and then the Rec-Plex as well, so that we can combine those. And I think it would work.
Okay.
So if I can make an amendment to my previous motion, is that item number 3, which would include the Rex-Plex funding and within the infrastructure projects. And now we're just left with 3 and 2. And we're actually taking up 2 priorities to Washington, correct?
So it's all the 3 that are here. We're just packaging that up as infrastructure being water infrastructure as well as the Rec-Plex. And I think there's probably a really good opportunity to have the Rec-Plex also serve as an emergency facility in the event of things that pop up, emergency sheltering, emergency cooling, evacuation. So I think that might be a pretty good nexus even with FEMA.
So combine it with 3 or number 2, doesn't matter.
Yeah, combine it, let's go 3, combine it with 1, and then 2.
Just take all 3. Combine them. Just take them.
So just go ahead and re-amend it.
It doesn't matter where you put it.
So just.
I already said it. I already put it. Yeah.
Do you mind restating it? I'm getting old.
What would be the correct way?
No, Councilmember Soto, the amendment that I heard, and please feel free to correct me, was to combine priority 3 and priority 1 into the number 1 the number one priority, and then priority 2 as the second.
You did it.
So if I heard correctly from Mr. Lopez, is that item number 1 can fluctuate between being an infrastructure project to a safety, which falls under item number 2. So at the discretion of the members, no, is that correct, or am I?
This is where the lobbyist comes in, because the lobbyists may say, hey, that Rec-Plex funding is best suited to have that conversation with FEMA. Or they might come in and they might say, well, that's a really good environmental protection agency discussion because of this bucket of funding that they have. So it's really the lobbyist helps navigate which department would be best suited for. There were conversations that we had with the Army Corps of Engineer where they discussed certain infrastructure projects, but then other infrastructure projects were discussed with EPA. So it just depends on where the lobbyist thinks the best opportunity is for that. And what will happen is on the One Voice trip, the delegates and I will be separated in different groups. And so it's more likely than not that we will not be in the same group because, Councilmember Mann may have a meeting with the EPA to talk about an infrastructure project. And then Councilmember Roth may be talking to FEMA to go over funding for the SAFER grant. And so that's how they divide and conquer. And based on the priorities of the collective region, that's how they'll set up what they call the strike teams that are made up of 6 delegates in each strike team. So it just depends on how those meetings get structured. So there is a bit of flexibility that happens. We rely on the lobbyists to make the call on who should be where, what meetings we have, and how it all pans out.
Okay, so you want to re-amend?
So let's re-amend that motion. So we're going to take priorities number 3 and 2, and item number 1 can be at the discretion of the delegates and our lobbyists that attend, because, well,
Am I confused now?
Yeah, so if we call,
We can't say
Yeah.
that we're going to place it somewhere, and
so
it
if
falls into somebody.
if it's infrastructure, I think what we do is we come into the One Voice group and we say we have 2 infrastructure policy priority areas, a Rec-Plex and the water system. If they come back and they say, well, that infrastructure Rec-Plex might be better suited for FEMA because of funding that's available for an emergency shelter, then I think we let them make that call. But for us, I think for the council, that's an infrastructure project for the city of Livingston. And then the second one is the SAFER grant, which is the FEMA priority for public safety.
So here's a suggestion for the motion to be item number 3, number 1, and number 2, instead of making a decision to throw number 1 into number 3. So just go 3, 1, 2.
3, 1, 2, that's... Go ahead and do that.
Yeah, but right now there's a motion unless you cancel your motion or just,
You can make amended.
No,
I'll rescind my motion.
there you go. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
On you.
okay. I make a motion for priority to be number 3, number 1, and number 2.
I will second it.
So we have a first by Mayor Moran, a second by Mayor Pro Tem. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Councilmember Roth,
Yes.
Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Soto,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Samar,
Yes.
Mayor Moran.
Yes.
Motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you.